Hello everybody and welcome back to another not applicable Formula 1 video. I hope that you're well. I hope you're ready and set to go for Turkey this weekend. 7 races to go and it couldn't be closer between our two title contenders. But I wanted to take this opportunity to look at one of those title contenders this season, Lewis Hamilton. Because during the Russian Grand Prix, and what a Grand Prix it was, Lewis Hamilton became the first ever Formula 1 centurion. That's 100 races. 100 races that he has won in his career. Absolutely sensational stuff, spanning between 2007 and 2021. In just 281 races, he has 100 wins. That is absolutely amazing. That means that he's won more than 1 in 3 of his races, and he's finished first more often than any other position on the track. We're looking at an absolute great of the sport. It was a wonderful race to see him win, and getting that 100th win was sensational. So what I thought I'd do today is go through a few of the highlights from the career of Lewis Hamilton, the man who has stood on top of the podium 100 times, pick out some of my favourite wins, some of my favourite moments out of his career, and sort of delve into Lewis Hamilton a little bit more for you guys, and just get that discussion going about Lewis Hamilton and whether or not, say it quietly, he is the greatest race driver of all time. But I want to take you back first, and my first highlight of Lewis Hamilton has to be that debut season for McLaren. He was phenomenal. Coming into the McLaren with double world champion Fernando Alonso as your teammate, my goodness me, the pressure on this kid was phenomenal. It was absolutely ginormous, and he looked amazing from the start to finish. Like, finishing second overall to Kimi that year, and it was so incredibly close that year as well, but he just looked great every single race. It was one of the best title fights you're likely to see. If you haven't seen the insides and outsides of that 2007 season, I massively recommend you go back and watch some of the highlights because it was phenomenal. But Lewis Hamilton came out of the blocks like an absolute animal. In 5 races, he had 5 podium positions. That's right, his 5 first ever starts as a rookie in Formula 1. Never been in a Formula 1 car before. 5 races, 5 podium positions, and it was 6th time lucky, and it's Canada I'm going to focus on a little bit. It was his first pole position that came in Canada, as well as his first race victory. There was safety car after safety car. The pressure was all on him. The eyes of the world seemed to be on Lewis Hamilton. I look back at the race now, and everybody was talking about Lewis Hamilton, this kid who's rocked up, got himself a pole position, is now starting on the front row of the grid on a soggy day in Canada as well. My goodness me. And to be honest, I could have picked any one of those races from his first season, because it wasn't until the 10th race of the season, before he didn't get a podium. He got 9 podiums in a row in his first 9 races. Just sublime. And as a rookie, he ended up that season with 4 wins, 5 second places, 3 third places in just 17 races. He was absolutely amazing, electric for the entire season, and what a debut season it was. By far and away, one of the best rookies we are ever likely to see. I then want to delve into the next season along. 2008, it was his World Championship season, and obviously 2008, again, was a tricky battle for Hamilton continually. We're still seeing a very raw Lewis Hamilton. He is still just a rookie plus 1. Like, a lot of drivers in the rookie plus 1 position are still getting, little bit of handouts here and there, a little bit of a leeway here and there. Lewis Hamilton is fighting for a championship. And not only did he fight for a championship, he won his first Monaco race. My highlight for that season, and there's some incredible highlights in this season as well, but my highlight personally is that Monaco race. He was brilliant. He was just brilliant in Monaco. It was lap 6. He makes contact with the wall between turn 12 and 13 and punctures his tyre. His rear right tyre is completely gone, has to drop to the back of the grid now, and manages to edge it into the pit lane. Like, by far and away, one of the best drives you're going to see on 3 tyres. Like, it's round Monaco. It's greasy. It's wet. Just how on earth he managed to get that back into the pits was just mind-blowing. He gets there, and now he's 20 seconds behind Felipe Massa. Felipe Massa that was also going for the world title at the end of this season. And these points that he picks up in Monaco are massive. He wins the title at the end of 2008 by just a few points, by the tiniest of margins. And, this race could have been that flipping point. This race could have been the point where, he gets a puncture, retires the car, goes home, and doesn't win this first World Championship. But instead, he comes back fighting, he comes back more. There's safety car after safety car again. Seems to be a common thing for Lewis Hamilton winning races. Just safety car after safety car at this point. Anyone and everyone had an incident in this race. And it's astounding that, we actually got a full race in the end and it wasn't just called off because everyone was in the wall. Veterans like Alonso, like Webber, were not having clean races, were hitting walls, spinning out. And luckily for Lewis Hamilton, Felipe Massa was one of those as well because Kubica actually took the lead in a Williams. Just seems crazy to think about the Williams winning a race at this point in this season, but back in the day, Williams were phenomenal, and he takes the lead, Kubica, from Massa, and Ferrari get the pit stops all wrong. The safety car was in and out all race, as I was saying, and Lewis Hamilton just manages to come out on top through the adversity, through the puncture, goes really long on his second stint, makes it work, is incredibly quick compared to everybody else, but still has to make those overtakes in Monaco when it's wet, when it's greasy. The walls are continually closing in on you around Monaco anyway, let alone when you can barely keep the car on the road. It was just phenomenal. And as I said, from a rookie +1 in Lewis Hamilton to then go on and win the season from this point from Monaco, amazing. Honourable mention as well for Silverstone 2008, because Silverstone 2008 was also an incredible win for Lewis Hamilton. But as I said, winning the title by the tiniest little margin, winning the title on the final lap of the final race of the season, hopefully is something that we see this year as well. But it was just the best way for Lewis Hamilton to get underway with his first World Championship. And of course, we know now it was the first of very, very many to come, mainly because of his move to Mercedes. And I'm going to delve into that move to Mercedes because Lewis Hamilton is now synonymous with Mercedes. He's become Mr. Mercedes himself, but that was not the case back in 2013 when he made that move over. It was, really looked down upon by a lot of people. It was a huge risk for Hamilton. He was going from McLaren, this team that sort of was looked at as if they couldn't really fail. Of course, we know from then onwards it did go downhill from McLaren very, very quickly over the next 5 years. But Lewis Hamilton was taking a massive risk, taking over from Michael Schumacher in the German Mercedes team. Like the pressure that he put himself under, and he was only a one-time world champion at this point. It was a huge risk for him in a German team with a German teammate in Nico Rosberg as well. But I'm going to actually highlight the second season that they had together, because Lewis Hamilton in this Mercedes, as I said, they're just synonymous with one another. But it was Bahrain in 2014 where they were just going toe-to-toe. It was Hamilton and Rosberg fighting for titles right in the middle of this Rosberg-Hamilton era. And if you haven't seen Bahrain 2014, it felt like every single corner these two were just going side by side into. They were all over each other for the entire race. It was Rosberg in the lead, then Hamilton, then Rosberg, then Hamilton. Every single corner, it changed hands as to who was going to win this race. No team orders as well, which is amazing to see because they are both going absolutely to the limit of their skill. And it is one of the best driving performances from Lewis Hamilton and from Nico Rosberg, to be fair, that you're ever likely to see. As I said, every single corner, they are millimeters away from touching and they make it work. But this was when, the love between them was still there, to be fair. And after the race, Lewis Hamilton did get the win and obviously went on to win that season. But you could still see that there was love between the two of them and they were still friends, which was great up until, they weren't friends anymore, because that Rosberg-Hamilton battle is one of my favourite eras of Formula One. Maybe it's just because, it was right in the middle of when I was a teenager and it connected with me, and I had Hamilton and Rosberg, two drivers that I quite liked, going at it every single race. But that era was phenomenal, because by the time we got to 2016, they'd been together 4 years, 2013 to 2016, and the tempers just grew and grew and grew. The temperature between these two grew and grew and grew. And it was actually 2016 Brazil I want to highlight as my next sort of favourite Hamilton moment, because again, it was in the wet. Again, Rosberg could have won the championship here if he'd have gone on to win that race. And I know that obviously he goes on to win that championship at the end of the season anyway, but the pressure on Lewis Hamilton, he has to get a win here, and it's actually his first win in Brazil. So he had to wait all the way until 2016 to get his first race win in Brazil, which I found crazy. And again, it was another crazy race where Lewis Hamilton had to show that desire, that hunger, that willingness to just never die and never lay down and never give up on this championship. And I think there's something that we're going to see again towards the end of this season. He will never, ever, ever lay down and just give up on a win, on points, on a championship. And 2016 in Brazil was exactly that. He showed everything he needed to. One of the best wet weather drives you're likely to see, given the pressure that was on him before the race. And again, he would go on to lose that championship, yes. He would go on to, lose it in the final race in Abu Dhabi to Nico Rosberg. And I think that just rounded him off as this hungry, determined. He put everything into that season, and only Nico Rosberg in the last few years has been able to come between Lewis Hamilton and his title. He's won 6 championships in the last 7 years. It's been pure dominance. And I think we just have to take a hat off to Nico Rosberg. I know that he decided to retire after that season, but if he'd have stayed around, what kind of driver could we have been looking at in Nico Rosberg? And what kind of driver could we be looking at Mercedes this season? My goodness me. Anyway, my fifth and final choice for the 2021 season. I thought, I'd have to go for something this season because he's still there. He's still dogged and determined. And a lot of my highlights for Hamilton are early in his career. And I feel like over the last few seasons, it's maybe been a little bit easier for him. Obviously, he's had those fights with Sebastian Vettel as well, but mainly the titles have been a little bit more straightforward for him. So I wanted to pick out a race this season to discuss a little bit. And he's had something this season where he's been the underdog for me. And I don't think Lewis Hamilton's been the underdog probably since, that battle with Nico Rosberg. And even then, you can't really call him an underdog. It was pretty 50-50. So Lewis Hamilton is finally an underdog this year, in my opinion. And I think just going back over the races this season, Hungary for me, I know he didn't win the race in Hungary. And yes, I know he probably would have comfortably won this race if it wasn't for this incident here where Lewis Hamilton was the only car not to go in for slick tyres, decided to stay out in the intermediates. But barring that and sort of ignoring that little fact for just a second, it was one of the best drives I've seen from Lewis Hamilton ever. Like, he was comfortably going to win that race up until this point. And then he had to just find pace, determination, passing skill, and he just drove and scythed through the entire field. And for me, it just felt like one of those races back when he was with the McLaren a little bit, he had to find every single little inkling of time. He had to work for every single lap of the race to try and get himself back up into points, back up into contention. Obviously, it was only Alonso in the end that could actually stop him for a lap or two. And then he didn't go on to win that race, but it just showed that consistency, that level of performance. He still gets the podium. He still gets a lot of points. He still puts himself in contention for the Drivers' World Championship in a race where Max Verstappen obviously dropped out of the points. He's still there in the podium position. It just shows everything I love about Lewis Hamilton. He is dogged, determined, and just does everything that he possibly can to get the most out of that Formula One car at every single opportunity. And it just goes to show that Lewis Hamilton, in 10 years' time, I think, honestly, we're going to be looking at him as one of the absolute greatest Formula One drivers there has ever been. Like, I know that it's difficult to look at it now. We've still got that perspective where it's recency bias and everybody loves to talk about Schumacher and Senna, but I think he's easily in that top 3 conversation already, and we've still maybe got 2 or 3 years left of Lewis Hamilton, 2 or 3 years left where he could win more races, more titles. He's been absolutely phenomenal for the sport. I don't think there'll be anyone like him ever again, and honestly, those 5 moments, the debut season, the McLaren Championship, his move to Mercedes, Rosberg battling with him, and even this season, he's still been one of the best drivers throughout that entire era. He's done it longer than anybody else I can think of. He's just been so, so good. But that's just my take on Lewis Hamilton and my 5 favourite moments from his career. Was your favourite moment in there? Let me know in the comments down below. If it wasn't in there, what is your favourite Lewis Hamilton moment of his career? There's a long career to pick out of, so I'm sure you've got a favourite. Thank you all so much for watching. Leave a comment down below. If you're about this weekend, we are obviously live for the Turkish Grand Prix. Feel free to stop by. We've got the pre-race Friday, Saturday qualifying, and Sunday the race. But again, thank you so much, and I will see you next time.